Uh, Good afternoon to all the participants for this particular seminar. Uh, Thank you so much for attending the session. And today we're going to talk about a crucial topic, a very important topic. But before we move into the topic, let me just introduce myself, spend probably a couple of minutes talking about myself. I'm Dr. Ernie Grio. So I'm your speaker for today about this crucial topic that I have mentioned a while ago. And I will be taking a look at this particular topic from the perspective of a teacher. Because I am a teacher, I have been teaching for the past 32 to 33 years. My teaching experience, I began with teaching students in the elementary school, then high school. And right now, for the past 3 or 4 years, I have been teaching in the university, teaching college students and teaching graduate school students. So what I bring into the picture is the perspective of teaching, the perspective of an educator or a teacher when we take a look, when we try to dissect a problem that continues to haunt us, and none other than teacher burnout. Because we all know that this particular phenomenon, we call it a phenomenon, will be with us whether we are a teacher, or whether you are a teacher who has been teaching for 20 years or 30 years, whether you are on your first 5 years of teaching, or whether you are the school officer, a principal perhaps, or a department head. But I think it is also important not only to focus on the phenomenon of burnout, but rather to take a look at the subtitle of this particular module, which is enthusiasm and self-efficacy. Because we're going to talk about burn-in, and we're going to talk about an antidote to burnout. And the antidote is teacher resiliency. And the way I look at it, two very important aspects or components of teacher resiliency are none other than teacher enthusiasm and teacher self-efficacy. So we formally begin this particular module by taking a look at this phenomenon of teacher burnout. And the figures that we're going to see later in this particular slide will alert us that this phenomenon is a problem. It's a huge problem, and a problem that we need to solve, beginning with ourselves. We should not slip into burnout. Definitely, there will be challenges, there will be dilemmas, sometimes failures, sometimes roadblocks, but we have to go over them. We have to triumph over them. And therefore, in order for us to recognize the importance of this particular phenomenon, let's take a look at the figure. And this figure is 30 to 40%. During the initial first 5 years of teaching worldwide, the attrition rate, the leaving rate of teachers is 30% to 40%. And we realized that, wow, this is a big problem because number one, it's difficult to look for teachers. It's difficult to look for good teachers. Number two, we need to train again those teachers who have invested 4 years or even 5 years in the teacher's college, and then another 3, 4 years, or even 5 years in-service training. And then we realized then again, if you take a look at the slide, that uh, the departure of the teacher leaving teaching, the teaching profession, is partly attributed to burnout. Now, definitely, maybe it has something to do with looking for a second career, a fresh start. Perhaps has something to do with the salary. Perhaps there is a need to move the family from one place to another place. And in that particular place, there are more attractive professions, etc. But definitely, we cannot take away from the picture the cause of teacher attrition, which is none other than burnout. In the second slide, so first, okay, before the second slide, I would like now to request everyone to start thinking about certain reasons, certain causes of burnout. Because if we're going to go back to that particular slide, what would have made those what would have convinced those teachers, the 30 to 45% during their first 5 years of teaching, to leave the profession? And as we noted, burnout could be one of the causes, one of the main causes. So let's start thinking about burnout. What are the causes of burnout? Why do teachers like me, like us, experience burnout? So we move on to the second or the third slide, but there's a bigger issue. So besides from 30 to 45% teachers leaving the profession, burned out teachers are more likely to remain in the profession than leave the profession. And we realize this is a problem because when you talk about a burnt out teacher, you have to consider two very important indicators, two very important items. Number one, they have less commitment. In fact, in the research literature, they talk about a loss commitment. And the second one is they have what they call decreased energy, decreased enthusiasm. And therefore, if teachers continue to teach and they have lost commitment or their commitment has been lessened and their energy has been lessened and therefore they're no longer enthusiastic. So this is a huge problem. It is a huge problem as we can see in this following list of dangerous situations. Number one, lack of commitment. They no longer look at teaching as a vocation, probably just a source of income. Lack of commitment, for example, in exerting their best effort to be able to teach well, to be able to make an impact on the students, on our students. You have exhaustion. They feel exhausted, whether mentally or physically. And we all know that when we are mentally exhausted, we cannot think properly. We cannot make good decisions. Consider, for example, a case wherein you are inside the classroom, going back to before the pandemic, and then you encounter a classroom management problem. Perhaps a student is talking out of turn. Perhaps a student is laughing out loud. And since you are mentally exhausted, physically exhausted, your reaction would be something that is not uh, appropriate to that particular occasion. Perhaps you will shout. Perhaps you will probably send the student out of the classroom. Now take a look at the third one. A teacher who is burnt out feels overwhelmed. He cannot cope with the demands. He cannot take a look at the available resources in his within the community when we're talking about a department or resources in terms of technology, because there is a feeling of being overwhelmed. The fourth one is lack of enthusiasm. So you have a lack of commitment. Definitely because of that lack of commitment, you have a lack of enthusiasm. An enthusiastic teacher is someone who teaches without the best effort. Someone who is a clock watcher. If there is 40 minutes or 60 minutes of class time, I will just coast along. I will just spend the time. I will just make sure that I cover the lesson rather than uncover the lesson. I will not exert a lot of effort in teaching the students to do critical thinking or higher order thinking. Might as well just ask them to memorize it. And then the fifth one is distrustful. And this is a very dangerous situation because when you are distrustful, you look at people, you look at your principal perhaps, and you see him as someone who is just trying to manipulate you. You look at the other teachers, and when they seek your help, okay, you don't provide that particular help that they need, even if you're capable of providing that help, because you will probably say that what's in it for me. So the second point makes us realize that burnout is a bigger problem when we take a look at it from the perspective of teachers leaving the profession. Because many of the burnt out teachers do stay. And when they stay, as we have clearly seen in the examples and in the previous slide, you have decreased energy, decreased enthusiasm. And who suffers? Those who suffer are none other than the primary stakeholders, the students. And we all know when we are around burnt out teachers, we also suffer because we know that our work is also dependent on the success of our colleagues or our fellow teachers. But wait, right? This is what we call a frontlet between our eyes because this is very important. There is a third reason why burnout is a very important and urgent topic. And it's a much bigger issue because when we talk about burned out teachers, when we deal with them, when we speak with them, when we work with them, their attitude becomes contagious. It's just like a virus. It affects us. When we deal with them, when we talk with them, when we plan lessons with them, when we collaborate with them, even probably when we attend a meeting and they are present, right? And then they always talk about problems. They always talk about negative things. They have a negative attitude towards work, towards the school, and towards students. And most likely, we will adopt the negative attitudes. We will adopt the negative attitudes. And here, even though we're not burnt out because of the fact that every day the air is filled with suspicion of distrust or mistrust or lack of effort, lack of excellence, it becomes a toxic culture. The culture of the school becomes toxic. It becomes a toxic workplace. But sometimes we find ourselves in a situation wherein we really reflect and we really ask ourselves if it is worthwhile to stay in the profession. All right. So number one, attrition. Number two, worse, they stay and they have an effect on the students. And number three, they have an effect on their colleagues. They have an effect on us. And just like what I said a while ago, when we talk about burnout, no one is spared from this particular phenomenon. It is possible that we will encounter it if we do not develop self-efficacy and enthusiasm. And therefore, this afternoon, we're going to talk about caring. We're going to talk about how to be a caring teacher. And this particular value has always been emphasized by Catalyst, by Mr. Rintoy, in the sessions or seminars that he has conducted. He always makes it a point that one cannot be enthusiastic, one cannot be efficacious, one cannot be an effective or good teacher unless you care. And it is important that we remind ourselves that we cannot be paid to care. And in order for us to be able to keep in mind that particular idea that a good teacher, an effective teacher is a caring teacher, we have to develop an antidote to burnout. We have to develop an antidote to burnout. So I pose to everyone, all the participants for this particular session, for this module, why do we need to care about this topic? It is a way of saying that I would like to commend everyone for spending 1 hour and 45 minutes or even 2 hours to hop in, enter the virtual room, and listen. And more important than listening is to be able to review, to be able to reflect. And perhaps tomorrow, Thursday, or next week, that we will be able to implement a certain plan of action. Why is this topic important? So I'll give you some time, probably 30 seconds, to be able to think about it. All right, so we move on. We will now take a look at the roadmap for today or the objectives for today. And there are three. The first one is we will go deeper into burnout. We will not only realize the immensity of the problem, but to be able to define it, to be able to see it, quote unquote, to be able to take a look at the causes of burnout, because we have to deal with this phenomenon. We have to deal with this problem. Therefore, we have to know it. Number two, we will analyze the importance of maintaining our enthusiasm and developing our efficacy. Because as I mentioned a while ago, burn-in is the antidote to burnout. And the burn-in takes into consideration the idea of the caring teacher. And that particular type or kind of a teacher is someone who is enthusiastic, someone who has efficacy. He knows that he can make an impact. He believes in what he is doing. And therefore, he not only looks at teaching as a profession, but as a vocation. And then the third one, although we will already be able to infer the strategies from the first objective and the second objective, the third objective is we will recommend 8 practical strategies on how to deal with teacher burnout. So 3. I would now like to pose the question before you decided to attend the module, to get in touch with Mr. Rentoy, with Catalyst, and to say that I would like to attend the session. What were you thinking of? What were your objectives? What are your objectives now? Do they jive with the objectives or the roadmap that I have laid down for everyone for this particular session? Teacher burnout, teacher stress, self-efficacy, teacher self-efficacy, teacher enthusiasm. And then how do we develop, how do we renew ourselves? How do we make sure that we are capable of dealing with stress? The practical strategies. So therefore, this particular module talks about the 3 E's, or will talk about the 3 E's of teaching. How do I become an effective teacher? Because I want my students to learn. Whether that particular learning takes place in a grammar class, the sentence patterns, or in a writing class, knowing how to write a paragraph, probably develop a story, or in a history class to be able to empathize with historical actors. I want to be efficient in the way I manage my time, in the way, for example, I compute my grades, I submit my grades on time, in the way I facilitate a meeting, a faculty meeting. For example, if you're the principal, or let us say you were asked to present during a meeting, I want to be effective, I want to be efficient, because I cannot make an impact in the lives of other people, especially my students, their development and learning, their formation, if I am not effective and efficient. But since we're talking about burnout, efficacy, enthusiasm, we have to add another E. How do I enjoy what I am doing, or what I will do for the next few weeks? Because I think when we talk about teaching, we have to talk about being effective, being efficient, and of course, it has to be a source of pleasure for us. It has to be enjoyable. It has to be enjoyable. So effective, efficient, enjoyable. We'll now go into the first part of the module, but let us go to one of the items, or rather, a quotation coming from George Bernard Shaw. And he says, to me, the sole hope of human salvation lies in teaching. And therefore, we will go deeper into what teaching is all about, because we are going to take a look at a phenomenon that continues to haunt us, that continues to be some sort of a big problem for teachers, that we need to surpass this problem in order for us to be able to teach well. And so the teacher burnout problem. So here's what do we know about burnout? Here's what we know about burnout, beginning with this particular person. His name is Herbert Freudenberger. He coined the word burnout, but that particular coining of the term occurred in the context of social workers who were dealing with people, mostly adolescents, mostly young people, who were into addiction. And Dr. Freudenberger noted, realized, observed that many of the social workers, no matter how enthusiastic they are about their work, no matter how committed they are about their work, no matter how well trained they are regarding their work as social workers, they reach a point when their energy became very low. They reach a point when they feel very exhausted, that they can no longer make a decision, a proper decision, or even think properly. And he coined that particular level of stress as burnout. So I would like now to request everyone to review and reflect on your decision to become a teacher. What was my philosophy of teaching, if that was probably 10 years ago? Or it should be, what is my philosophy of teaching? Because that philosophy of teaching continues to guide you, whether you're planning a lesson, whether you're trying to figure out what is the particular teaching method that will be most successful in communicating the content, etc. Let us reflect. Because as I mentioned a while ago, when Dr. Freudenberger looked at the social workers, they were enthusiastic at the beginning. These social workers were committed to their profession, but at a certain point, they experienced burnt out, exhausted, lack of commitment, probably even physical discomfort like stomach ache, etc. Why did I choose to teach? I asked that particular question because it is important. It is important to always go back to our philosophy of teaching, particularly the reason why we decided to spend, okay, our time to contribute to the development of children, because our profession is a stressful profession. Our profession is a stressful profession. We work in a stressful environment, primarily because we deal with people. Imagine, for example, in the context of online teaching and learning, you're teaching 25 students, maybe even 35 students. So there are 35 students in the virtual classroom. You need to attend to the needs of those 35 or 25 students. You need to know those students. You need to know their interests, their background knowledge. In fact, in a presidential address given by Lee Shulman before many psychologists, he looked at teaching and compared it to medicine, to compare the teacher to a doctor. And he came up with the conclusion that our profession, our teaching as a profession, we teachers have a complex profession, far more complex profession than medicine. than being a doctor. And he said, a doctor will be able to imagine the work of a teacher only during, number one, during a time of natural disaster, probably a massive accident involving 25 people. And number two, those 25 people are in the ICU. A doctor could only imagine the work of a teacher if there are 2 points that will be considered. Number one, a natural disaster. And number two, in an ICU full of 25 people, attended only by one person. And that one person is the doctor. And here we realize then that we are susceptible to burnout, that we cannot escape from tackling the bull by the horn. We have to face this phenomenon because this is a problem, just like what I said, that will be with us until we retire. It's just like we have to learn how to dance with it. And we recognize the stressful environment and we can relate to that stressful environment. So you can see in the slide, for example, stressful items like engagement. How do I engage 25 or even 15 students? Just 15 students inside the classroom, coming from different family backgrounds, having different background knowledge. Number two, how do I maintain classroom discipline? I remember when I was a youth teacher, this is a big problem for me. It is something that consumes my time, my energy. Before I enter the classroom, I have to take a look at the class list. I have to review the individual members of the class and try to anticipate what particular discipline problem will most probably occur and how will I react. Time pressure. We only have 6 hours 6 hours of teaching, 4 hours of teaching, 5 hours of teaching. And then when we go out of the classroom, we need to attend to lesson planning. We need to attend to checking the essay, the papers, the homework, the exercises. And we have to spend some time talking with the students, probably even the parents, most probably even the parents. So therefore, because there's time pressure, you talk about a heavy workload. And if you take a look at the slide, even probably lack of recognition, So it's a stressful environment. And here I have a probing question for everyone. Because when you talk about burnout, you talk about anxiety, even probably panic attacks. There is a failure to concentrate. Of course, because you are preoccupied with something, a stressor, a stressful event, then you cannot make a good decision. You make a poor judgment, or you even struggle to make a decision, even just a decision. So I would like now to pose to the members, the participants for this particular module regarding burnout, regarding that stressful environment. What causes stress? What is the cause of stress, especially in your own context? Whether you are an elementary school teacher, a high school teacher, a college teacher. So spend some time thinking about it, and most probably you will realize that when you talk about that cause of stress, you're not only talking about the level of the classroom, but even a higher level, even probably a school level factor. So here are my initial lists, and later on we'll try to take a look at some more details about this list. Okay, as I mentioned, it can be the workload, lack of time, lack of resources. I have a heavy workload, but I lack the time to be able to achieve all the things that I need to do, considering the workload, or perhaps I lack resources, or it can be that the school culture is quite toxic. I fear for my safety because probably, perhaps there's name calling, even probably bullying. Perhaps in my school, there is a lack of support coming from my principal. Whether that particular lack of support is a lack of time spent chatting with me, or a lack of support for a certain strategy or project that I'm trying to push forward to, to implement, for the department to implement, in order for us to be able to make an inroad in the learning of our students. So initial list of reasons, but we will go back to this initial list of reasons. So we're now going to go into, before we take a look at burnout, we'll take a look at teacher stress, because later on we'll try to distinguish between teacher stress and teacher burnout. And teacher stress is an emotional and affective experience. But this emotional and affective experience is not something positive, but rather negative. Meaning to say, the demand of teaching, whether the demand of teaching is submitting the lesson plans, whether the demand of teaching is going inside the classroom and maintaining order and discipline, whether that particular demand in teaching is submitting your grades on time, or dealing with the parents, especially difficult parents, right? The demand exceeds your resources. And therefore, because it exceeds your resources, your capability to be able to cope with the demand, to be able to do the job, then it results into what we call negative experience. Something that is negative, something that probably you want to do away with, something that you probably would not want to spend a lot of effort doing it, because in the end you would say my effort will not be, or will not be probably recognized, or will not result into a positive outcome. So when we talk about stress, the demand is overwhelming. The way you perceive it, the demand is overwhelming, just like what I mentioned, whether the demand has something to do with planning, something to do with actual teaching, managing the class, dealing with parents, even probably giving feedback in order to improve the students, okay, or checking the papers and then computing the grade, because your resources will not be able to help you cope with the demand. And when we have this particular stress in our teaching duties, there is tension because our resources could not cope with the demand. Sometimes disappointment, or even anger, Now I know that probably you're thinking, I do experience these particular things. Like for example, everyday tension. When I go inside the classroom, there's a tension. Okay, and that particular tension has something to do with gaining and maintaining the attention of my students. There's a certain tension, for example, in managing the class, especially because I'm teaching 50 students. There's a certain tension, for example, when I try to take a look at the content at the standard, and then I try to make sure that this particular activity is aligned with the standard, and this particular activity will be able to help the student understand the content or make them work collaboratively. So this is what we call stress, but this is not yet burnout, because later on we would realize that when we talk about stress, sometimes or many times it is also good to have stress. Because if there's no stress, there's no excitement. There's no excitement. Later on, we will define what is that negative experience, negative emotional affective experience that will lead to burnout. But as we can see here, when that everyday tension, disappointment, or even anger becomes long-term, becomes predominant, then it is burnout. When that everyday tension, when that disappointment, when that anger becomes long-term, becomes dominant, it is something that you feel every day. Even probably when you go home, you even when you go home, you even think about it. Or when you sleep, you even dream about it. It becomes burnout, right? So let's move on and let's take a look at some sources of stress. So remember the initial list that I have given. And here, there are a lot of sources of stress. And just like what I said a while ago, when we talk about it becomes very stressful, sometimes leading to burnout, if our resources could not cope with the demands. Could not cope with the demands. Misbehavior on the part of the students, right? Something stressful for me because the students keep on talking out of turn. The students are not paying attention. Some of them are drawing on their paper. Some of them are doodling. Some of them are talking out of turn, right? But we have to take a look at a resource. How do I deal with this particular demand? And perhaps dealing with this particular demand, we'll have to take into consideration items like, number one, I may have to ask my principal or a good teacher to observe my class, to give me some pointers, some tips in order for me to be able to handle this particular situation, to be able to improve in terms of the way I manage the class. So if you take a look at the absence of shared leadership, you lack autonomy there. Everything probably is dictated by the department head or by the principal. It becomes a cause of stress. So sometimes you realize then that there are certain causes of stress that may lead to burnout, which are beyond our control, our total control. But I think, for example, in this particular case, the absence of shared leadership, it is important for you to talk about it, to bring it up to the proper authority, right? So, and then of course, COVID-19 uncertainties. Considering the fact that in this particular situation that we find ourselves in, it becomes more stressful, very stressful for us because we have to look after our own family. We have to make sure that we are healthy and that our family members are healthy, that we don't get infected. So we move on. So this is, in fact, in teaching during the pandemic, I realized that when we talk about this particular situation, three very probably top of the list stressors are workload, because it's no joke teaching online, planning lessons online, using online and distance learning. If we have been accustomed to planning lessons, preparing exercises before the pandemic, most probably you have been spending twice the time you must have spent before the pandemic planning lessons. And then we have to take a look at student well-being. Of course, even before the pandemic, we have to pay attention to the development of the student, their well-being, and not only about learning, cognitive learning or academic learning. But here, the situation is that something that that is the cause of a lot of stress for families. Just imagine, for example, if they are studying from home, they don't turn on their camera because they don't want probably the teacher to see that they live in a cramped environment. And that's why many of us, when we teach online, we don't actually require our students to turn on their camera, considering connectivity problems. That because if you turn on the camera, you consume a lot of bandwidth. But of course, we are also sensitive to the needs of our students. And then the perceived lack of support from the administration, probably in the way we use the learning management system, in the way we use technology, in the resources that we need. So let's move on. And I would like to pose the question to the participants regarding if there are other sources of stress. Let's spend some time, probably a minute, to be able to talk about this particular point, to think about this particular point. So besides the examples that I have given, are there other sources? Are there other reasons? Now, there is another definition of teacher stress. And this particular definition builds on what I had mentioned a while ago regarding the imbalance between the demand and the resources. Because if you take a look at one very good quality of a teacher who is able to prevent burnout, that particular teacher is able to cope with the demands because he's able to make use of the resources. And remember, the resources are not only material things. Resources could be our colleagues, our co-teachers. Resources could be our officer, the person on top of us, the person who supervises us, the principal. A resource could be a mentor, someone who coaches us. A resource could probably be a hobby or even a person outside of school, someone in the family. And in this particular definition, if we take a look at the keyword is our resources, and therefore it endangers our well-being. And it endangers our well-being because if you take a look at it, I will go back to this one later. If you take a look at it endangers our well-being because if you take a look at it, number one, when you experience stress, you become cynical. Later in one of the slides, we will encounter the word cynical. Nothing good will come out of it, even if I teach well, even if I plan well. You become depersonalized. And when we talk about depersonalize, you try to see yourself outside of the department, even probably outside of the school. Meaning to say, you no longer consider yourself as a member of the department, as a member of the school. There is a certain loss of trust. You cannot make sense of what you are doing as a teacher. You just go through the motion of teaching. There is no wonder, there is no surprise, there is no aha moment. Because we all know there has to be a sense of excitement. There has to be a sense of aha moment. And that particular aha moment is when a student is able to come up with a good answer. And that good answer clearly indicates to you that they are learning. Right? Now, not just like what I said a while ago, I think at the very beginning of the session or in the middle of the session up to now, not all stress is negative because we also need stress. It is a source of excitement for us, a source of enjoyment for us. So when we talk about that positive stress, we call it eustress. So it's beneficial to a person or beneficial to a teacher. Remember the three E's: effective, efficient, enjoyable. Today, even though it's difficult, or tomorrow, even though it's difficult again to teach the senior high school class, I am motivated to teach. I have to compute and submit the grades. I am sure I will be able to do this. The deadline is tomorrow. I'm sure I'll be able to do this. It will take a lot of time, a lot of effort, but I'm sure I'll be able to do this. There is pressure, but there is demand, but your resources are up to the demand. Okay? Ernie remains a problem in my class, but no worries. I will consult Mr. Rentoy tomorrow. And let us see what particular plan can we come up with, can I come up with in order for me to deal with this particular problem. Tomorrow, I will try out differentiated instruction. Wow, based on the training session that I attended, it looks difficult, but I am excited because I know it will help me improve my teaching. And more importantly, it will help the students learn what I'm trying to teach them, because I will be able to address their individual needs. So as you can see, it is important for us to reconsider the idea of stress. Many times, it's beneficial and we need it. The only thing that we have to consider when dealing with stress is the fact that we have resources. Either the resources comes from within us because we, for example, we renew our commitment to our profession, or for example, you read a book, you read an article, or let us say you volunteer to attend a training program in order for you to be able to cope with this particular demand, right? Or that particular resource has something to do with convincing the principal to buy this particular application because this particular application will help, the technology will help in the learning of the students, or consult another teacher, a fellow teacher about a certain problem. So it is possible to capitalize on the stress and make that particular stress something that is positive, something that is eustress. Because again, remember, effective, efficient, we have to make it enjoyable, right? It's just like learning, okay? Learning has to have not only rigor, but there has to be joy. In teaching, there also has to be joy. And remember, where is the joy? Where will that joy come in? It will come in if we are able to surmount the challenge. We're able to surpass that particular roadblock. Because we all know if we're able to surpass or surmount that particular challenge, then we were able to teach well. And remember, in every challenge, there is stress. It becomes enjoyable. Now, let's now take a look at the effects of teacher stress. If you are cynical, if you have a feeling of depersonalization, if you have lost your enthusiasm, if you lack commitment, what is the effect on students? The research is very clear. When we talk about the effect on the students, it's very clear, especially from the perspective of communications and interactions with the students. And it can be clearly seen in the way we manage our classroom. Because teachers, stressed teachers, burnt out teachers, specifically burnt out teachers, are far from being effective classroom managers. What is the effect of teacher stress on other teachers? Rather on teachers? Dropout, attrition, leaving the profession, whether that particular greater level of stress is caused by misbehavior on the part of the student, the workload, or poor relationships with colleagues or with the principal. Teachers drop out because they perceive themselves not to be contributing to the goals of the school, to the goals of the department. So effects of teacher stress on students, effects of the stress on teachers, especially we were able to take a look at classroom management. We're able to take a look at dropout, moving out of the profession. What do you think are the other effects of teacher stress? Although a while ago, especially in the initial slides, during the opening of the module, we were able to talk about attrition. We're able to talk about the effect on the students and even the effect on other teachers, not only on the teacher. Now, according to research, and I think if you take a look at your own personal experience, you may probably say that indeed this is true. The main contributors to teacher stress are two. Number one, toxic school culture and the lack of what we call collegial leadership. Toxic school culture and the lack of collegial leadership. Number one, school culture, toxic, a toxic workplace. Teachers, rumor mongers. There are rumor mongers among the teachers. There are malicious comments about their fellow teachers. Other teachers put down their colleagues. There is probably name calling. So there is lack of unity. There's lack of what we call essential agreements among the teachers because uh, they don't engage in dialogue. The second one has something to do with a lack of professionalism. So you have probably a department head, probably a principal who does not want to share authority. So when it comes to taking a look at the lesson planning format, the lesson planning format is chosen by only a few, probably only the principal, not even consulting the teachers, or for example, dictating a certain teaching method. That particular teaching method will be used in almost all instances when a teacher teaches a class. So these are the two main contributors of teacher stress. Now, I would like to, I did bring up these 2 points because I would like us to realize and to go back to the one item that I mentioned a while ago. When a teacher deals with stress and particularly with burnout, there are certain things that indeed he is able to do, that he is able to tap into his resources. In order for those resources, he can use them to be able to cope and even probably go beyond the demands, to be able to teach well, to be able to plan well. But definitely, when we talk about the causes of stress, it's not only the demand. We have to take into consideration school level factors. These factors are also outside of the power of the teacher because it has something to do with the other teachers, with the principal, with the administration, with the supervisors. And here, you can clearly see this is based on research that indeed they pinpoint to the role, important role of the culture of the school, of the principal or the department head or the subject head or the coordinator regarding making sure that everyone will be treated professionally. We move on then, and a very important question then, right? If we are going to deal with the teacher stress problem, and hopefully it will not lead to burnout, how is our culture? A very important question also is, am I contributing to a strong culture? Do I dissuade myself or prevent myself from talking badly about other teachers? If there is a complaint about my colleague, do I bring up the complaint, for example, to a person who can do something about it? So how is the school culture? How is your school culture? Now, stress could lead to burnout. So this is now what we call a really a negative stress. And in many studies, teachers make up more than one fourth. In fact, 27% of all worker samples in burnout studies. Again, pointing to the fact that we have a very stressful environment when we teach. Classroom management, planning lessons, submission of grades, dealing with parents, even probably difficult parents, dealing with our supervisor, dealing with colleagues, particularly in coming up with essential agreements regarding what we need to do in order to improve our teaching. It's a part of the dialogue. And there are negative consequences, as we all know, especially based on the initial discussion, when we talk about burnout, when we talk about burnt out teachers. In fact, if you take a look at the second part, the second sentence in the slide, when student engagement suffers, because student engagement is heavily influenced by teacher commitment. And we all know that when a teacher is burnt out, lost enthusiasm, lost commitment, and therefore if you have lost commitment, that particular teacher may just be going through the motion of teaching. And we all know that the students will be able to clearly detect that this particular teacher who is just spending time, who is just looking at the clock, and hopefully that the clock reaches 12 o'clock and they will be dismissed. That particular teacher is not investing a lot of effort in the lesson, in trying to explain the lesson. Then it's okay to have the here and now stress. Sometimes it's okay to react to stress, to even anticipate stress. But it is not okay if the stress caused by work becomes chronic, long term, every day. You even dream about it. It is something that really occupies your time. Sometimes it immobilizes you. You cannot think, you cannot work. You become depersonalized. You become detached. You're no longer concerned about other people. In faculty meetings, probably you're not listening. You're not paying attention. You're not taking down notes. You probably have this particular stance of whatever will happen, it's up to you. Keep me out of it. So it becomes chronic. It becomes chronic. And when we talk about a chronic work stress, we have to consider the fact that number one, really it's not a mental illness, but rather it's a workplace phenomenon. It is something that this particular problem, it's not an illness, a mental illness, is only found in a workplace. So for example, teaching, teacher. And it is, when you have that particular chronic work stress, burnout, it is described as something that is physical tiredness and mental tiredness, right? But that mental and physical tiredness is extreme. You have used and utilized all resources. You have used and utilized all resources, that you no longer have any resource in your midst to be able to cope with the demand. And I would also like to point out that when we talk about chronic work stress, it's not because of a lack of moral fiber, because you're not strong, etc. Because just like what I said a while ago at the beginning, it could even be a problem even for the good teachers, even for the strong teachers. It's not a lack of moral fiber. And here, we go back again to the fact that there are individual causes of stress. The beyond realize then that in order for the school to be able to have a cure, quote, to stress and prevent it to becoming a burnout, chronic work stress, there has to be a response on the part of the teacher, but also a response on the part of the administration, on the part of the officers. So we go now to what we call teacher burnout. And teacher burnout is a psychological strain marked by number 1, number 2, and number 3. Remember, exhausted. You are emotionally overextended. Okay, emotionally exhausted or physically exhausted. You are depersonalized. You are cynical. You always criticize people. You criticize policies. And of course, there's a feeling of loss of productivity. Uh, Lesson plan, it is something that is not a good, even it's not an exemplary lesson plan or not even a good lesson plan. Whenever I go inside the classroom, whenever I teach, I feel that I have not explained that particular lesson well. So these are the indications of burnout: emotionally exhausted, depersonalized, cynical, and then reduced personal accomplishment. And therefore, when we talk about burnout, then you no longer, a teacher is no longer energetic. A teacher is no longer involved or hopeful. A teacher is no longer efficacious because he feels, I am ineffective. I cannot do something that will help my students learn. I am cynical and I feel exhausted. And remember, when we talk about chronic work stress, we go back again to the fact that this is for a long term, something it is not something that will go away, for example, after a week or after a month. And we all know that when this burnout really happens and it hits you, it hits a teacher, it is something that is an accumulation of failures, of frustrations, of negative experiences, of not being able to cope with the demands. So this is what we call burnout. And there are key symptoms of burnout. And here I just listed down 5, even probably physical, like for example, stomach ache. How can I go inside that particular classroom? Oh no, I will be able to experience again, see again this particular student. I feel that I'm going to vomit. Take a look at the third one, flashback of negative experiences. You cannot get away from it. You cannot set it aside. It continues to haunt you. Perhaps that negative experience has something to do with dealing with a difficult parent. You were trying to offer a solution in order to help their children, and probably you experienced resistance on the part of that particular parent. You're constantly feeling on edge, defensive, right? And take a look at the person, the difficulty on concentrating on tasks, because of course your mind is preoccupied by something else, perhaps fear, perhaps anxiety, and that's why you cannot concentrate. In other words, you take a look at the word loss, energy, enthusiasm, and even confidence. And even worse, confidence, energy, enthusiasm, and even confidence. And if we take a look at the teacher, right? When we take a look at our work as teacher, or even the person of the teacher, we need to dress up properly. We need to smile. We need to be enthusiastic about the content that we are teaching. When a student, for example, offers a wrong answer, we need to correct the student, but with that particular correction, it leads to the right answer, because That correction is in the form of a question. We make the student think. Now, these things are no longer the primary concern of a teacher who is a burnt out teacher. Because as clearly seen in this particular slides, and those essentials are enthusiasm, energy, and then the confidence. Remember, you become cynical, you become depersonalized, you have a sense of the fact that you cannot do something good. You see yourself as someone who is ineffective. All right, so that's the first part of the module. And I would like now to invite everyone to take a look at the 3-2-1 summary. What are the three important things that I learned about stress, about burnout, about eustress? Two things that probably I would want to talk about further with my colleagues when I go back to teaching, to conversing with my colleagues probably later in the afternoon or tomorrow. And then what is one very important idea that I need to spend some more time to reflect on? So I would like to invite everyone to spend probably a minute thinking about those points. So I will continue. I will no longer give a break, but I will end at 4:45. So let's now take a look at the second one, the second part of the module, which is basically the antidote to burnout, which is burn in. We're going to talk about efficacy. What is this all about? And then enthusiasm. And definitely resulting into what we call resilience on the part of the teacher. But let us first try to take a look at this quotation from Ernest Boyer. And he said, a poor surgeon hurts one person at a time. A poor teacher hurts 130. And imagine if you have 150 students or 200 students. And think about 130 in 1 year, another 130 next year. That's why we cannot afford to have burnout teachers. Indeed, we will experience stress every day, but it has to be a positive stress. It becomes a positive stress if we are able to dip into our resources, whether materials, persons, our character, prayer, gratitude, etc., to be able to cope with the demands or the workload of our profession. So let's take a look at the second part, because the second part is discovering what is worthwhile, as important as the first part of the module, because this is about who we are as teachers. And as an antidote to burnout, we have to maintain what we call teacher enthusiasm. And we have to develop what we call self-efficacy. And I would like now to pose a question by looking at the points regarding teacher enthusiasm and teacher self-efficacy. Siguro mga a few seconds lang. Let's think about it. Ano kaya yung teacher enthusiasm and teacher efficacy? Ano kaya siya? Kasi antidote siya eh. Para siyang Moderna. Para siyang Sinovac or Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine. It may not work all the time, but it works most of the time. Right? So ano kaya yan? So let's now take a look at enthusiasm and efficacy and realize this position to. It's a part of my character as a teacher. It's my attitude. But of course, not only attitude. Later on, we'll realize it's not only attitude. Enthusiasm and self-efficacy are not only attitude. There's a certain set of knowledge and skills. I hope there is another module on teacher agency, because that particular topic really is very important. Okay, and we can talk about teacher efficacy. But these are teacher dispositions. And what is research telling us? Research is telling us that there is a connection between the attitude or the disposition of the teacher, right, as could be gleaned, inferred, or seen in the job of the teacher and classroom stress and burnout. So you cannot set it aside. If you are going to talk about stress and preventing the teacher to slip into burnout, you have to talk about these positions. And by looking at the research literature, I realized there are two very important teacher dispositions: enthusiasm, efficacy. And enthusiasm means energetic teachers. Remember, loss energy, loss enthusiasm, loss commitment, right? And the other one is efficacy, confident teachers. Because in the first place, right, how can I take a look at my resources, whether material, whether person, etc., if I am not energetic, if I'm not committed? Okay? How can I take a look at my resources to cope with my demands, or to go beyond the demands, even to go beyond the demands, if I'm not confident that I'll be able to find the right resource in order for me to be able to cope with this demand, or even the confidence to say, to tell myself that I will be able to surpass this particular challenge. Yun ang kailangan natin, kaya tinawag natin burn in, right? Burn in. Now, so we will explore the concepts of enthusiasm and efficacy. Why? Because they constitute a very important, the two constitute, or teacher resilience. When we talk about teacher resiliency, wherein you thrive despite difficult circumstances, despite difficult challenges, two very important factors of teacher resiliency are enthusiasm and self-efficacy. Right? So, teacher enthusiasm. Ano kaya siya? Dalawang bagay. Number one, good teachers see themselves in essentially positive ways. Yun, very important, di ba? I I look good in front of the class. I comb my hair. I fix my necktie. I button my shirt. Positive self-concept. Okay, I'm going to use this particular lesson planning format. It has 5 parts, right? I'm sure I'll be able to come up, okay, with a good lesson plan. Positive self-concept. Okay? When I walk inside that particular classroom, I am sure that I'm going to make a dent in the lives of other people. I'm not only going to teach the content, but I will focus on the child. Because the child or the children or the learner or the student is more important than the content. Right? Positive self-concept. But take a look at the second one. You go beyond yourself, because that enthusiasm means have a belief in other people. That student, ang pangalan niya si Ernie, medyo mahina siya, medyo, okay, hindi siya nag-aaral, medyo mahirap siyang i-manage as a student, but I'm sure there will come a time when Ernie will bloom, will blossom as a good student. I just need to find a way to be able to make him realize that he has to exert more effort in my class. My fellow teacher, si Mr. Rentoy, he's struggling, okay? He's having a difficult time trying to manage the class. But no worries, I will help him. There is a very good book penned by Harry Wong, Dr. Harry Wong, and Rosemary Wong. I will lend it to Mr. Rentoy. So that's teacher enthusiasm. It's a positive self-concept, but more than the positive self-concept, or beginning with that positive self-concept, it extends to the belief in the way you look at other people, because you see them as you can clearly see here, they are trustworthy, they are friendly, they are good, they're able to do something, they have the ability, they have the competence. So that's teacher enthusiasm. Now, I would like now for you to, considering this particular definition, a two-pronged approach in defining teacher enthusiasm, siguro you can try to look at your own situation and probably give concrete examples of teacher enthusiasm. What are concrete examples? What are other concrete examples of teacher enthusiasm? Okay, so again, very fast. So yan, ito, where the rubber meets the road. Let me give you a better definition of teacher enthusiasm by looking at the classroom, at the level of the classroom. And you can clearly see, if you have this enthusiasm, maybe it's really, really difficult for burnout to seep in, to burn out, to burn out, to become a problem for me. Yes, I will encounter stress, right? But it will not be a chronic work stress because I know that I am this particular type of a teacher. I am enthusiastic. So let's take a look at it down in the level of the classroom. Sino ba siya? So first, research has shown that a teacher's intensity and enthusiasm is positively associated with engagement of the student. And take a look at this one, and even achievement. Hindi lang siya motivation and engagement. Of course, the practical indicator of motivation is engagement, but achievement. Achievement means the student is reading according to the expectations of the reading teacher or the English teacher. The student is able to probably recall the capital cities of certain countries according to the expectations of the standards for the teacher in social studies. So achievement. So what is this teacher enthusiasm in the level of the classroom concretely? When a teacher draws something, explains a concept, writes something on the board, shows a realia, or walks around the classroom and thinking out loud, in order for the students to be able to see what he is thinking about, to be able to see, quote unquote, what he's thinking about, because the teacher views the topic as meaningful, interesting, and important. And because he looks at the topic as interesting, meaningful, and important, he communicates that passion to the students. So, di ba? So ito yung sinasabi natin na effective, efficient, and then he enjoys what he is doing. He enjoys what he is doing. Right? Of course, when again you consider, okay, that is possible if, let us say, you're teaching, I don't know, maybe 5 subjects instead of 6 subjects, or let us say you're teaching 6 subjects instead of 8 subjects. Just like what I said, when we talk about having a cure to burnout, the cure does not only rely, we will not only have to rely on the individual person. The culture and the administration, the principal, okay, will have to do something also. Because the cure is not only, okay, will not only come from the teacher, but as you can see, this is something that is within your power to have or power to alter. If, let us say, you're losing your enthusiasm. So teacher enthusiasm. Now, so teacher enthusiasm also affects everyone. It's just like a wildfire. It spreads very quickly because it not only affects your students, other people will also notice it. Who will notice it? Your fellow teachers, probably the principal, probably the department head. probably the parents, because the students will talk about you and the way you teach them, the way you communicate the content to them, probably during mealtime, during family get-togethers. So it spreads, it's just like a wildfire, especially with what is happening in Turkey, what is happening in Greece nowadays. So, so this is teacher enthusiasm. So we will now take a look now into the other half. And the other half is what we call self-efficacy. And we will define self-efficacy. And I would like to propose this particular definition. So it refers to the ability of the teacher, the capability of the teacher to cope, of course, related to assessment for learning, giving feedback, studying student work to be able to know what particular points to give to the student to consider, evaluation, dealing with colleagues, perhaps participating in a professional learning community, doing action research, etc. So this is what we call self-efficacy. And when we talk about self-efficacy, uh, it is something that can be measured. It is something that can be measured because, just like what I said a while ago, you do not only talk about, when you talk about self-efficacy, you do not only talk about a disposition because it's not only an attitude. It's also about knowledge. Kasi syempre, if you talk about I can successfully cope, I can successfully come up with this particular lesson plan, right? This particular lesson plan was a recent introduction coming from the school. We participated in choosing this lesson plan format, right? I believe that I will be able to come up with a good lesson plan using this format. It's not only about the attitude. It's also because of the fact that you have the knowledge and the skills to be able to come up with the lesson plan using the new format. So for example, number one, where are the students going? Yes, I have to take a look at the standard. I have to examine the standard. I have to look at what we call the content standard and the performance standard, because the particular goal where the students are going will have to come from that standard. Yes, I have to be very familiar with inquiry-based learning or problem-based learning, right? Because if I'm not familiar with problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning, how can I come up with instructional activity? How can I communicate the content to the students using IBL or PBL if I don't know IBL and PBL? Okay. But also, self-efficacy is this position. It's a gang-ho a difference, beginning with this particular point that I'm doing right now. It's rather tedious. In fact, sometimes I don't like it, but I have to push myself because I know that I cannot teach well unless I come up with a good plan. Okay? So ito yung self-efficacy. And remember, I told you a while ago, it can be measured. And in fact, it was measured in using meta-analysis, whether qualitative or quantitative meta-analysis. And we all know that when we talk about meta-analysis, the meta-analyst, the researcher, looks at thousands of research studies and computes the effect of a particular factor, of a particular strategy, of a particular set of knowledge and skills, a particular type of teaching on the learning of the student. So tawag natin doon teaching effectiveness. And look and behold, the most important factor in the learning of the student is the teacher, right? But the most important point, the most important specific factor related to the teacher or teaching that has the biggest impact on the learning of the student is self-efficacy. Kaninong self-efficacy? Collective teacher self-efficacy or collective teacher efficacy. Meaning to say, okay, school unit cannot become a good school. In the research literature, they call a good school a strong school, an excellent school. It cannot be an excellent school if there are pockets of good teachers. There has to be a lot of good teachers with very good self-efficacy. That's why you call it collective teacher efficacy. And the number is astonishing because it's 1.57. 0.7 pa lang, 0.8 pa lang, medyo malaki na yun. Pero yung effectiveness niya is 1.57. And therefore, we realize if I have that efficacy, right? Number one, I have the resources. I know how to use the resources. I am committed. Of course, I'm enthusiastic. I am energetic. I know I can make a difference. And besides knowing that I can make a difference, I have the knowledge and the skills. So this is very important. We have to maintain our enthusiasm. Remember, maintain, because we all know that we were not, no one forced us to become a teacher. We wanted to become a teacher. That's why we have to maintain, even probably, okay, not only maintain, even probably improve. But we have to develop this efficacy. Just like what I said, okay, it's not only a disposition, but also very important to develop that attitude of a good teacher, that gung-ho attitude. Now take a look at the effect of self-efficacy. This is again research. The belief of the teacher in their efficacy to promote learning affect the types of learning environment they create. And then, including the level of progress of learning of the students, whether in reading, whether in science, in social studies, in math. And because when we talk about self-efficacy, this is basically your, in layman's term, your capacity to excel, to surpass, your capacity to be able to become successful, your capacity to cope, okay, despite the challenging circumstances. And remember, in a class of 25 students, it's always a challenging context. It's always a challenging circumstance. Why? Because you are not teaching a class. We are not teaching a class. May mga pangalan sila, di ba? Si Man, si Emmanuel, si Manny. Okay? And we also deal with diverse group of students. We teach individual students and we deal with diverse group of students. We have to deal with the high ability student. We have to deal with the difficult to manage student who always probably gives us a pain in the neck. We have to deal with disadvantaged students. They come from poor background or not even a poor background in terms of a poor economic background, perhaps from a dysfunctional family. Failing students that they need, the students who need academic intervention, right? So talagang kailangan natin yung self-efficacy. Kailangan talaga natin yung efficacy because in order for us to be able to deal with the stress and not slip into burnout, we need to thrive in challenging circumstances. And remember, when we talk about efficacy, di ba? We go back to, okay, job demands, job resources. If I am an efficacious teacher, I have the resources. So therefore, I will not only be able to cope with the demands, in many instances, I'll be able to surpass the demands, go beyond the demands. And to help me develop that efficacy, I have to be committed, I have to be enthusiastic, I have to be energetic. So taking the reverse gear then, what is the connection between TSE teacher self-efficacy and TBU, teacher burnout, research again is very clear. Teacher self-efficacy is negatively associated with stress and the best of all, burnout. Negatively associated. If you have it, then most probably you will not slip into burnout. So parang yung efficacy rate ng Moderna, maybe 95%, right? Maybe 95%. Or even if you take a look at 85%, it's still a very high efficacy rate. And that's why teacher self-efficacy is very important. Teacher self-efficacy is very important. And take a look at the second point there. Okay, it's also related to academic achievement of the students. Of course, if they see a teacher who is confident, they become confident. Para siyang mirror neuron. They see a teacher who, if they listen to a teacher, okay, they listen to a teacher who can explain very well, who avoids overloading them with a lot of terms, probably when the way he explains a certain formula, of course they learn. It's a part of efficacy. If they see a teacher who can deal with the classroom management problem without shouting, without losing his control, probably using his hands, tapping a student on the shoulder, very slight tap, or using his eyes, looking at the student in order for that student to clearly see that what he or she is doing is something that is disturbing the class. Of course, definitely. It pushes forward the idea that the students will be able to learn in this class. Now, in teacher self-efficacy is also very important because we talk about the fact that especially in a pandemic, we have to reclaim our autonomy. We have to reclaim our title as a professional teacher, right? LPT, licensed professional teacher. A licensed professional teacher, looking at the word professional, is someone who has autonomy. And right now, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and many people would say that what we are using as a pedagogy, whether blended learning, hybrid learning, online and distance learning, or just plain distance learning, is a pandemic-induced pedagogy. And if you are going to build your self-efficacy, I think it is important to assert your autonomy. Okay? A clear example is change. Oh no, okay? We are now being introduced to a new learning management system. We're going to use Canvas. We're going to use Canvas in the way we implement synchronous lessons. We're going to use a new application technology, Padlet. We're going to introduce a new teaching method. And this particular teaching method is something that uses a lot of ICT, something to do with TPAC, technological, pedagogical content knowledge, etc., etc. Now, when you only look at the chains, the direction of the chains, the goals, because when you take a look at, if you're going to use a new learning management system, a new teaching method, a new application, a new application or a new app, a new technology, etc. Now, do not, in order for you to be able to develop your self-efficacy and not to compromise your self-efficacy, you have to assert your autonomy. I am a professional here. And as a professional, I should not only look at this particular change from the perspective of changing to, that at the end, I'll be able to use the LMS according to how it is described by the provider probably. That I become tech savvy. That, for example, I become someone who is very good in using, let us say, Zoom, etc. But also take a look at the changing from. At what particular stage I am right now in order for me to reflect on that stage so that I will be able to imagine how will I change my current situation to that particular situation that the school or department or my principal wants me to become. Because as we all know, if you think that way, you are not only concerned about the product, but rather the process of change. You're not concerned about becoming a perfect teacher using that LMS, right? But rather to be able to use the technology in a maximum manner to be able to contribute to the learning of the student. So you are in control because self-efficacy means also that you are in control. And I did mention this particular point because I know that many of the things that are causing stress for us right now may have something to do with technology, may have something to do with an app, may have something to do with the change that we are being asked to, to do, to reach, to accomplish. So it is important that when we talk about self-efficacy, the, the idea of professionalism is still intact. That we have this particular capability to control that change. So the process, the journey is as important as the product. And that's why when we talk about this particular situation that we are in now, when we talk about the pandemic, right? We cannot be perfectionists. We cannot be perfectionists. It's okay not to have the perfect lesson plan because anyway, there's no perfect lesson plan. It's okay not to buy the best laptop in the market worth 80,000, probably a 40,000 peso, 50,000 peso laptop would be enough. It's okay to sometimes fail in our teaching. We should not sweat the small stuff. And let's learn from the mistake. Let's learn from the failure. All right? So we have to reclaim. Kasi yung pandemic para siyang great reset. Great reset in the way we look at teaching, in the way we look at good teaching. And definitely because we are in the stage of experimenting, because we have not yet totally mastered what online teaching and learning is all about, we will commit mistakes. We will encounter failures. But it should not cause us great stress because we will be able to rebound from the failures. Okay, I hope you agree. We'll look into this one. So improving the TSE and minimizing stress. How do I improve it? Okay, I can self-regulate. There are certain things that are under my control, but I can also collaborate with my colleagues. I can do co-regulation, or better both, or better both. Because when we talk about working with our colleagues, we talk about the three C's. We have to connect with them, definitely, definitely. Because remember, okay, when we talk about teaching, we should not isolate ourselves. We should not practice social distancing. We have to be in constant communication with our colleagues. Because what is happening in the class of our colleague, we teach in the same level, or we teach in the same subject area, the same department, grade 3, grade 2, grade 4, social studies or English. What happens in the grade 3 class will definitely affect what will happen in the grade 4 class next year. There has to be connection, communication, right? Faculty meetings, dialogue, conversations, because there are common problems that need to be tackled, that need to be solved. And then, of course, collaborative lesson planning, collaborative crafting of rubrics, probably even performance tasks, collaborative interpretation of the standards in a document, in a curriculum document, because we all know that when we talk about curriculum, we cannot talk about that curriculum that is in the folder. For example, a Word document or a PDF document. A curriculum is really what exists in the mind of the teacher, how the teacher interprets the standards or the content. And more important than the individual interpretation is a, a what we call essential agreement of a group of teachers, whether in a department or school unit, regarding what those standards are all about. That's why when we develop our self-efficacy, when we continue to develop our self-efficacy, we cannot do it alone. Self-regulation, it should be co-regulation. It should also be co-regulation. It's a combination of the two. So it leads to what we call teacher resilience. Teacher resilience. Because if there is a combination of enthusiasm, there's a combination of enthusiasm and self-efficacy, right? It leads to resilience. And this is what we call now the burn-in, the antidote to burnout, the chronic work stress. Just imagine, for example, if the teachers belong to a learning community, a community that trusts one another, co-regulation, a community that works together, a community that celebrates the success of students or their success together, a community that engages in collaboration, whether collaborative planning or collaborative teaching, because, for example, someone will be teaching, someone will observe, and then after that, they will come together and they will think about how to improve that particular class. So that in the next class, in the next section of the same grade level, same lesson, there will be an improvement in the way the lesson will be conducted. So it builds what we call, co-regulation builds what we call a community. And remember, when you build a community, you're contributing to what we call a strong school culture. That's why the development of resiliency on the part of the teacher is not only dependent on a single teacher telling himself that I can do it alone. One cannot do it alone. There has to be involvement of the other teachers, of the other. It has to be community work. All right. So, in other words, resiliency, enthusiastic teacher, energetic teacher, efficacious teacher, I can cope with my workload. I have control over my teaching. I can see my reward. I have support from my co-teachers. In the end, I like what I'm doing. Because here, you dance with stress. Because you balance, there's a balance between the teaching requirements and the teaching resources. And the balance is in the form of you develop enthusiasm, you develop what we call efficacy, you become someone resilient. And the balance will prevent us from slipping into burnout. All right, so I would like now to invite everyone, especially for your colleagues who are not in this particular seminar, what particular, probably big idea that you would like them to look into, to think about? So I would end here because the 8 practical strategies could be already could be inferred even from the first part of the module and the second part of the module. So I promise to end at 4:45. It's almost 4:45. And I will also provide a copy for Mr. Rentoy, and Mr. Rentoy will be able to provide a copy for you. So I would like to say thank you to everyone. Then I will now turn over the floor to